For over 30 years, we've had the privilege to live and work in this great community. Kerrigan, Estes, Rankin, McLeod, and Thompson, representing accident victims across Northwest Florida.
And now, from Pensacola, Florida, it's Within Reason with Bob Kerrigan and Bill Rankin.
Welcome to Within Reason. Thank you for watching. I'm Bob Kerrigan and Bill Rankin here. You know, we've talked about the fiscal cliff. I think we're reaching an intellectual cliff here. Mr. Rankin is dangerously close to the edge. Based on your pre-show comments, you're right on the edge. One more step, phew, you're gone.
Now,
it's just, you're gone. I mean, really.
This from somebody who's prepared for the show by reading Mad Magazine. Mr. Kerrigan's been sitting here for the last half hour reading Mad Magazine, put a little check mark. So the show is going to probably consist of about half Mad Magazine and half sanity.
I was reading this instead of the Republican platform. And I found this a lot more intellectually stimulating.
The platforms are
than your platform, your people.
Not
I know
my
you don't have people.
The Libertarian Party has a platform, which is good.
Yeah, I'm sure it is. But
nobody votes for me.
Here's what I don't get. You want to support Romney, right?
Yes.
But you're not a Republican.
Right.
And you can't stand the Democrats.
Right.
And you claim you're a libertarian, but really you don't subscribe to most of their wacky principles, right?
There are a lot of them I don't subscribe to, yeah.
So how would you classify yourself, really?
Party of one. Party of one. That's it. That's me.
Well, if you move up a little from where you are now.
Nobody's wanting to sign on.
No. But you see what I have here?
You got something from Mitt?
Another thing from Mitt.
Did he send it to you?
Of
That's
course
a mistake.
Of course he sends it to me. The Republicans
I thought they screened all the liberal wackos out of the mailing list.
They send me this stuff because they're very interested in my opinion about it.
Another one of those,
Republican Party said, listen, send it to Kerrigan because if we have the slightest flaw in our logic, I'll point it out on the air, okay? And which is what I'm about to do with the latest literature. Unless you have something else that you would like to talk about. Would you like?
Well, what I have will wait.
It will?
Yeah, sure.
Well, here's the first question.
You got a letter from Mitt?
I did, a letter from Mitt. Dear Mr. Kerrigan, you see there's a level of respect here.
As there should be.
Got my attention.
Well, and we're going to talk about this trophy in a minute.
I didn't even notice the trophy there. Oh, I do see that trophy. That's a beautiful trophy. Well, I hope we'll talk about it.
That
later, it was so
yeah.
nice of the staff to put that out. All right. Here's the question I want to ask you that they're asking me. Also, I'll phrase it to you instead of to me. It says, do you place your trust in government or in the American people?
Aha.
Key.
None of the above. Can I answer none of the above?
Well, that's not acceptable, but this says, our country is at a crossroads. In one direction lies bigger government, even bigger debt, and certain decline.
True.
In the other direction lies limited government, free enterprise, and unlimited wealth for a very small percentage of the people.
I don't think it says that.
Well,
there certainly is some truth to that because the way we're going to have bigger debt, bigger government. The government's expanded in lots and lots of ways, and I personally think it's a disaster. We need to shrink the size of government, and Mitt is somewhat more likely to do that than Mr. Obama, although this is interesting. Paul Ryan came out with his plan, and the plan increased federal spending modestly. He did. His plan increases federal spending.
Oh, I know it does.
Whereupon President Obama declared this is social Darwinism, not increasing the federal government expenditures enough. Oh, it's getting crazy out there. It's $1 trillion a year more in debt.
Liberals should be ashamed that they and their policies have failed these good and decent Americans Who are we talking about? The top
some good and
half
decent
of
Americans.
1%? The CEOs of the country are the good and decent Americans
No,
that the liberals have failed.
The liberal policies have failed everybody.
Oh, they failed everybody. Okay.
The liberal policies have failed the people on food stamps.
Oh, indeed. 47 million, right?
Yeah.
Did we say that?
It's a
46 and a half
huge
million?
number.
A huge number, yeah. All right, now let me go to some of the other statements here. Let's see. This is, will you please sign and return the enclosed pledge of support? So let me.
The answer to that is no.
No, you wouldn't do that?
Would I sign the pledge of support?
Yeah.
No.
Like the Grover Norquist pledge.
I have no.
Okay. No new taxes.
Usually those things are so silly. I mean, are you for freedom and prosperity or communism and change? I mean, they ask these questions that, what? Come on.
I don't apologize.
And I don't sign pledges of support, but every time Obama says something that really angers me, I give him it about $10. I'm up to about $150.
Well, that's good.
Yeah.
Well, it's a very substantial contribution.
You didn't earn it. You didn't build that business, Kerrigan. And you're not paying enough in taxes. I know you agree with that.
Yeah.
No, you don't.
I don't apologize for America because I believe in America. That's a nice
I don't
thing.
apologize for America.
Yeah. Does that suggest?
And I believe in America somewhat.
Does that suggest that others have apologized for America? Is that what he's trying to say?
That's what he's trying to say.
Yeah, that's the Republican line. Oh, he went around the world and he apologized for bombing people and sending in drones and killing people during weddings and things. He apologized for that, and he shouldn't have done that.
Well, he had a very conciliatory attitude. He thought, I don't know that it hurt anything, but maybe it did. I mean, he went around saying we have to have more mutual respect, and we're going to reach out our hand. If you will open your clenched fist, we'll reach out our hand. And I think people like Ahmadinejad over there, that wacko, they just perceive that as weakness. So I think that might have been a mistake. I don't think he feels apologetic about America. However, there are loads of pictures of Obama bowing to all kinds of people. And when he bowed to the Saudis, that was a hell of a bow. He was bowing to Saudi king. He was bowing way down like that.
The Bushes have been in bed with the Saudis from birth.
True.
Okay.
True.
Their whole family's in bed with them.
Absolutely true.
So listen,
Yeah.
Obama bows with them. You know, Bush jumps in the sack with them. I mean, that's a little
That's all
worse.
true.
I
agree with all of that.
You're quite accommodating.
well.
I thought sure you'd fight. So here's the form. Can I put you down for like $25 maybe here? It's the lowest amount you can
No, I
give.
do it on impulse.
But you can't, this thing says you can't give lower than $25.
It doesn't say that. It just
says, I will help your candidate.
Then it says other.
Well, other is a
could be $2.
Other is after $2,500.
Yeah, but you could put $2.
You could put $2, huh?
Send him 50
See,
cents.
at least with Obama, if you give $25 like that, you'd get a ticket to the raffle to have dinner with him, which is a little benefit.
Listen, Obama started that. And they're now raffling off dinner with Obama and Beyonce and Jay-Z or something. No, literally, really, honestly. Dinner with celebrities for voting, because all the celebrities love Obama.
Well, I wrote a letter to the Democrats and said that was beneath the dignity of the President of the United States to raffle off a dinner.
Yeah.
And then they said, well, they were really interested, he'll be really interested in your opinion if you win the raffle.
Oh, you know what they do?
What?
I heard they do.
What do they do?
It's not, they pick 50 raffle winners. Then out of that 50, they select somebody who's kind of palatable to the media. That's the way it's going to work. If you read the small print.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So you think that...
Oh, it's not a drawing then?
It's not exactly a drawing.
Because I tell you what, they'd
I mean,
be afraid of it.
there's some element of...
Some nut would win it like you.
Right. They're going to have to... Somebody embarrass the president. Said, there's a president food stamp.
Yeah.
You know? I am tired of you telling me I'm not doing my share when the top 10% pays 70% of the taxes and the bottom 50% pays zip. That's a bunch of crap, Mr. President, sir, with all due respect.
Who was the guy that had the cowboy hat on and was on the television every morning, and he has a horse farm, and he's an like a lot of the Republicans. No, he's an ex-alcoholic, and he had some... He had some Republicans. Well, a lot of them are, but he said,
sure.
yeah, he said. he was invited to something that Clinton did, and he made a speech. You remember who I'm talking about?
No, I don't remember.
I'll think of his name in a second. You know,
you can see why they would. You can see why they'd want to do this.
Oh my goodness! I mean, the guy
so
got up there.
You might win the raffle when you are. They might be sending your tickets to Chattahoochee or something. You know, probably
and the
want to chill on that a little bit.
Would have to say,
so nice to meet you.
I'm very interested in your opinion. But I never knew they rigged that deal. I mean, on top of everything else, they rigged it. That was.
Well, you wouldn't expect them not to do some checking on prospective winners. I mean, they could be very embarrassing.
It could be embarrassing.
Dinner with a drooling idiot who shows up in overalls and.
I was just so naive.
What if you had to have dinner with Ron Paul?
Oh,
that would be very embarrassing.
It could. I mean, when they sent it out and they said, you know, you buy your ticket and you might win, and then the president would be very interested in hearing what you have to say. I kind of thought, well, maybe that's true. I just didn't think you ought to raffle.
Do you think he'd really, especially Obama, who is pretty much impervious to other people's opinions, the great I am. You think he'd want to sit down and listen to you for a while? I don't think so.
You don't think so?
No.
We'd be rather listen to me.
Have you ever actually been to Harvard, much less admitted?
Actually,
you didn't go there.
I agree.
Forget it.
I've been
He's not
there.
listening to you.
I've been there.
You've been there.
I've been there.
You learn anything?
Yeah, not anything.
I didn't either.
John Kennedy said...
They let me in a track meet one time, and I lost.
You didn't win?
I didn't win any. It was a freshman track meet. I didn't win.
John Kennedy said you can always tell a Harvard man, you just can't tell them much.
Right.
You know, and that's true. Now, Bill claims that his subscription to Mad Magazine has run out. I did not get the renewal notice, was not sent to me. The thought occurred to me that you may be on a no subscription renewal listing of some kind. Because you've been very critical of the magazine in the past.
No, not that critical of the magazine.
But I'm surprised.
I think using it as a source of what's supposed to be intelligent political discourse may not be well advised. But let's see what comes out of that you're going to share with our viewer.
Alfred E. Neuman has more sense than almost every political candidate. Here's the cover. I don't know if we can get a nice shot. Maybe we go to this camera over here. Can we get a nice shot of Alfred E. Neuman here on the front? Okay. There's the Twilight right there. Doesn't he look cool? He's a good guy. I know some people, you know, that look like Alfred E. Neuman.
I do too.
Every time
I can think of somebody right now who looks a little bit like Alfred E. Neuman.
I know it, and it's like it's like you ought to send your picture in. But this is a great magazine. If you really want to be, you know, some intellectual stimulant, it's better than the New Yorker, for example.
You think?
Yeah. Yeah, I think so. Because
intellectually stimulating than the New Yorker.
Yeah, but the New Yorker is
the New Yorker is full of. There's very few people in New York that aren't lefties. Yeah. So what you get in the New Yorker, you know, Hedrick Hertzberg and all that stuff, they just love Obama, and they just are not big fans of capitalism.
That's what I'm saying. I would think you'd like it more. You know, here's a great story in here about things you see and don't see at a strip club. I think that's worth reading.
Yeah, sure.
But we have other things that we'll talk about later in the program. And we have the latest Harper's Magazine, Harper's Index, and one of the cover stories, this is really something you'd like. How to Rig an Election, the GOP Aims to Paint the Country Red by Victoria Collier. Do you get
Oh, my gosh.
Do you get Harper's? You
Not anymore.
Yeah, you probably should. Maybe I should get...
no.
The Invisible Stimulus in Search of What Obama Built. Okay, so that, though I haven't read that. Could be on the other side of that.
Was that kind of an anti-Obama article?
I'm not sure until I read it. Harper's is pretty evenly balanced, I think. And you know,
I quit Harper's and I went to the Atlantic for a while. I just liked the writing in the Atlantic.
Well, you like it because it's on your coffee table. That's why you like it. You know, people walk in and say, "Oh my goodness, the New Yorker and the Atlantic."
And I prefer nobody walk in. I mean, what's works better for me? I know it's not mainstream thinking. You know, I hang out with the people at the law firm and my family. That's about it.
Yeah, but when
I'd just rather not visit with anybody else. I'd rather read.
Your wife has a lot of people come by the house.
My wife has a lot of friends.
Okay, they see the coffee table and they say, "Oh, the New Yorker."
That's it. There's no New Yorker on there.
Oh, there's not.
There's a lot of New Yorkers up in the bathroom, which I hope they don't see.
Okay, all right. Now
we're giving away too much here.
We have.
Yeah.
I have a fact here that I was going to tell you before our first break. The percentage change since 2010 in the per-pound cost of a Thanksgiving turkey.
Wow.
Yeah.
I don't know.
22 cents. Now, why are turkeys costing more?
More per pound.
Yeah, I think it's the.
I have no idea.
Don't you think it's the feed costs? Okay.
I would assume.
So let me give you
but
the next
I don't
one.
know.
Portion of the total U.S. corn crop that goes to make ethanol.
Oh, 50% or something, isn't
40.
it?
40%.
40%. What a stupid thing to do. Man, this is messing with the free market, and it generally does not work. Ethanol mandate is a bunch of nonsense. It was lobbied up by Archer Daniels Midland or something.
Of course it was.
It's atrocious.
You know who agrees with you about that, and who said it from the very first time it came up, and who had billboards saying it. You know who?
Oh, no.
Fidel Castro. It's exactly what he said.
Well, I think Fidel is right about that.
Exactly what he
Fidel's
said.
probably right about a lot of things. I don't think he's right about throwing everybody who disagrees with him into prison. That's probably not good.
He's in very poor health right now, they say. There's a lot of rumors that he's
probably be able to.
seriously
Really, Fidel?
Seriously ill. But really, he was very vociferous, as they say, about diverting corn from people that need to eat.
You're raising the price of corn for poor people all over the world.
Yes.
And putting it in cars. Oh.
And on top of everything else, it's tearing up small engines. You know that?
No, I didn't
know
know
ethanol.
that.
Oh my goodness!
I didn't know that.
Talk to the fishermen about their outboard motors.
People
with all the two-cycle things. I guess everybody that has small engines, they say this stuff is eating it up, and apparently it destroys the hoses and things like that. That it's just bad, very bad. They just try to find.
And in the United States, it really doesn't save a lot of energy. The cost to produce it and transport it and all that, it's
about a wash at best.
It's about a wash.
About a wash,
It is more political crapola. The politicians are not stupid. They just don't have your interests at heart. They have their interests at heart.
Of course.
And one of the good things about a smaller government is they're going to be less goodies to pass out for these politicians.
You know, our office manager made a great point, that with the advent of electronic form making,
this is good.
that a person can sit in an office in Washington, D.C., and mid-tax year change a reporting form for a quarter. So that in a given tax year, you've got reporting for 2 quarters with one form, 2 quarters with another form. There's little continuity between the two. You're trying to reconcile them. And so normally you have to post these things, you have to circulate them. It takes a long time to distribute them. So you have a delay of these regulations for, 6 months to a year. Now, zip. Instantly, all these forms are out there, and you have to.
She has, and I don't know that she's a rabid right-winger or a libertarian or anything, but she's a financial person, and she works with banks and taxes and stuff. And she says, in our little business, we have some real estate. We're not, real estate is not like Ted Turner owns all of Montana, nothing like that. We have some real estate. And we have our law business, which isn't that big a business. And there is a real burden on our small business. And we are not going to give up our health insurance for our employees, but we're in the kind of business where every nickel counted, and you're on the edge. You might start doing stuff like, well, let's not have them full-time so we don't have to give them health benefits. And that's what's going on. People are uncertain. There are always unintended consequences of all this stuff that government does.
Indeed.
And we've got way too much of it. They ought to back off. They ought to pay more attention to the original intent, which was to let the states be the laboratories of change. What they want now is to impose uniformity on the states.
I do.
Which brings us to another issue.
But before you get to that issue, make this point, that we will take most of January of 2013 to comply with the huge stack of regulations that relate to our business. And let me give you an example of what now is being required. Let's say you have 5 subcontractors who have
I thought they knocked that off.
Who have 8 subcontractors themselves.
Right.
You're responsible for every payment that's made ultimately to the party that receives it. So you have to report the detail that
on 1099s, really?
Yes, that your subcontractors.
I thought they backed off. There was something in Obamacare that if you gave more than $600-700 to any vendor, you had to report it on a 1099, and then the businesses screamed and they backed off of some of that. Now, this may be a new regulation.
That might be an Obamacare, but that's not true for all other regulations, from what I understand, that you are responsible for them, which you can't possibly keep up with it. You can't possibly know if the subcontractors are correct doing it, but you're ultimately responsible. All of this, rightly or wrongly, is designed to derive more revenue in the country and to close all the gaps.
It is such a burden. The banks are forced to make all kinds of reports. The government doesn't pay them for it, just report a lot of stuff to us. The financial companies, mutual fund companies and so forth, now they've got to report way more than they did. They're the ones who report your basis. It's not up to you to report it anymore. They don't trust you. Basis is, for example, what you paid for an asset, and then when you sell it, you subtract the difference. That's what you made on it. And they got to do more reporting. Well, it's going to cost them more, so they're going to drive up your costs. It's not free. The government is just leaking into everything.
And it's not the Republicans or Democrats. It's the expansion of government. It's ubiquitous. It's happening every place. Nobody can stop it.
It's the nature of government.
You can't control
Thomas Jefferson said something about it. It's just in the nature of government to assume more and more power and authority to itself. I tell you my story about the homeowners.
When you can do that, but we have to take a short break. And then we'll be back.
Good.
And Bill will tell you this story. We'll talk about the amendments, and we will discuss this magnificent trophy that's sitting right here in front of us. We shall return shortly.
For over 30 years, we've had the privilege to live and work in this great community. Kerrigan, Estes, Rankin, McLeod, and Thompson, representing accident victims across Northwest Florida.
Okay, we're back. Our best materials during the break when the commercials run, but you were telling me about your condo association or something. What was that about? Yeah, I'd like to hear.
This is a neighborhood association. It wasn't condos. It was a little neighborhood. Had a private street, and we had to do some things. And according to the bylaws, I was on the board, and we had some very limited power. You had to approve plans to meet certain guidelines for new houses because they wanted all the houses to look snazzy. And then we had to collect money and escrow it for this little private road that we had, and that was about it. That was the only authority we were given. So one of the board members received a complaint from somebody that one of the neighbors, actually in our association, had a dog that was barking all night. And so the discussion started immediately about barking dogs and what we're going to do about it. And I take credit for this. I said, "Who gave you the power to regulate barking dogs? What are you, crazy? I mean, it reported to the dog catcher or something, but nobody's given us any authority to look into dogs, to punish people for dogs, or to care about dogs, and you're wasting my time." But it is in the nature of organizations to...
Okay, I have a question. I remember that you and your wife had two of the worst-looking, mongrel, horrible dogs.
She loved those dogs.
I don't care that I've ever seen. And I suspect, hey, let's go. They were the barkers.
No.
Come on now.
They were very annoying.
To say the least. And they were
very
ugly.
Annoying.
And they were ugly. Are they all gone now?
My wife loved them.
Are they all gone?
She kept those dogs alive forever.
Yeah.
Honestly, she gave one of these little dogs mouth-to-mouth resuscitation.
Did she really?
The dog was having a stroke or something, and she said, "I had to run next door to get this doctor who was going to come." She just loves animals to a fault.
Didn't she do that pounding thing on the
No,
little
she
chest?
breathed in its snout.
Oh, did she?
She kept it alive for a while.
Well, that was wonderful.
And she said, so that we got the dog to the vet, and I had to help her with it. We got the dog to the vet, and the dog kind of came back, and she was worried that the dog had brain damage. And this is a dog that never was housebrooked and used to pee on all my stuff.
From breathing into the dog?
No. She said, "I'm worried that the dog has brain damage because it had a stroke or something."
Yeah.
I said, "How would you know?" This dog's just a...
Listen, I can't believe you told that story, though. I mean, this is the kind of thing that you should keep inside the front door.
So
generally, people don't post this on a Facebook page or something.
But what's underneath all of this, my wife's a lovely person and loves animals and wishes everybody well.
Yes, and those dogs were barking and driving everybody crazy, and then you took this constitutional position.
Like 16.
Don't mess with my...
By the end of the life of these dogs, they were either sleeping or doing something disgusting. Those are the choices.
Well, the point is, and I think you made the point, that groups like this is what drives me crazy about all these old people retiring from up north and run these condominium associations. They drive everybody crazy because they're trying to regulate everybody's life. Everybody's life, every tiny little thing in your life. And they're all in these condos all over the place.
Your placemat outside your door is too colorful. Well, you got to restrict that.
Or a thing on your blinds, or not the right color, or something on your balcony offended somebody from the South Bronx or something. You know, my view is, why don't you go back up north? What are you doing down here anyway? I mean, I don't know. You probably don't agree with that.
Very balanced view. No, I don't agree with that.
You actually...
Why, you think people who don't come from the north are always reasonable?
Yeah, I do.
Okay, good.
Generally, that's what we have. That's the common denominator of Southern people. They have a sense of balance and realism and fairness and everything. And people come down.
Really?
I told you about the bumper.
Watch Deliverance?
I told you about the bumper sticker, right? We don't care how you did it up north. I love it.
That's a good bumper sticker.
That's one of my favorite bumper stickers. We don't care how you did it up north. You don't like it, go back. That's what we tell these people.
It's hard for people from the north.
I know.
Florida wouldn't be much.
All right.
You know?
What a portion of the French people are pessimistic about the future?
Oh, you told me this.
Yeah.
It's high.
70%.
As they should be.
But I'm saying you'd be comfortable if you lived in France then. Because you're kind of pessimistic about the future, aren't you?
I am somewhat pessimistic about the future if Obama gets reelected,
Rank of China among global beer producers by volume.
I'd say one.
Exactly correct. Exactly
China
correct.
has a pretty good history. When the European countries came in and established their little, they call them canton, the European countries just took over some territory. They just had they had better weapons. They didn't have a better society. They had better weapons. So they pushed China around and they said, we're going to take this big section of your property and we're going to build our own little place and we're not going to let the Chinese in. And the Germans had good beer. And that German brewery survives to this day under a different name in China, and it's pretty good beer. I think it's Tsingtao beer.
That's an interesting little historical point.
Yeah.
So you got
there's some pretty good Chinese beer.
You nailed that. All right. Percentage of Americans in 1992 who believe gun laws should be stricter.
In 1992, not too long after Reagan, I'm going to guess it was a 60%.
78. That's pretty good.
More.
All right. Percentage you believe so today.
20.
43.
Yeah.
But it's half.
Why is that? Why do people feel less secure under the enlightened leadership of Mr. Obama?
Because all the right-wing nuts are saying you need to buy all the ammunition you can. So the gun manufacturers in this country, that's the most prosperous industry in this country. They're making a fortune selling guns. They can't make the guns fast enough.
That is unfair to Obama. I mean, Obama kind of saw messing with the NRA is kind of like standing on a railroad track and thinking you're going to stop the train. You ain't.
No, you're not.
And the NRA is extraordinarily powerful. I think they go too far. But I don't think our Second Amendment rights are in danger. And Obama has announced that he is for the Second Amendment. But he said something that I agree with. He said, it may be time when we have a serious discussion in this country about guns. I agree with that.
We just had one today, a shooting today. Seems like there's a shooting every day someplace. And innocent people killed. But they always say this, the NRA and the gun people always say, guns don't kill people. People kill with guns.
Well,
or
that's
something.
ridiculous.
Whatever that thing is.
But I wouldn't like to be in a society when only the criminals could have guns.
I agree with that too.
And I think if you want to hunt or you want to have a gun for self-protection and you're not a felon or not certifiable, you ought to have one.
Let me ask you this question. You need to have a license to drive a car because it's a dangerous instrumentality and it could hurt somebody. Why don't we have strict licensing? You have a right to have a gun. They can't stop you, but we're going to have a very strict safety measurement of some kind and some kind of analysis of criminal background part of they're doing now. Right. But before we're going to give you a gun that you can kill people with, we're going to make you subscribe to some kind of reasonable scrutiny. I mean, what's wrong with that? I mean,
as opposed as I am to more government and more regulation, that makes sense. I mean, you hear about, it happened at FSU, maybe it's a year ago now. Some guy was supposedly cleaning the gun and it went off.
Terrible.
Well, if you've had any training in guns, and you're probably sick of hearing this from me, guns are powerful weapons. You need to treat them so seriously. Every gun is loaded. You never put your finger in the trigger. Somebody hands you a gun, you must clear it and make sure it's unloaded. That has to be ingrained in your brain. I think one way or another. Now, a lot of people are just going to get training from their daddies and they don't need it. But there is certainly an argument for what you say, that you should be required to know something about gun safety before you have a gun.
I think the laws that require mandatory incarceration are ridiculous relative to drugs, but very sensible relative to a crime where a gun is used. And you tell young men especially, you pick up a gun, you're going to prison, and you're going for a long time. So you get one on the street, you're in possession of a gun, well, you're not trained,
I agree with you.
You're armed, police officers find you, then you got some serious problems.
Now, what you hear all the time is, well, you shouldn't have a gun because it's much more likely that it'll be stolen and it's much more likely that you shoot somebody. I saw this on television. There was a 12-year-old girl home, and somebody's breaking into the house. You didn't see this. And she called her mother, and her mother said, get the gun, go in the closet, and call 911. So she called 911, and they have the 911 call. And this perp, this is a 12-year-old girl, she's got the gun in the closet. And mom says, shoot through the door. She shoots him and gets this guy in the shoulder. The law enforcement shows up and arrests him.
Unusual.
Well, that probably is unusual.
Unusual.
But you wouldn't want to take away somebody, and telling a 12-year-old, I don't know.
First of all, how would a 12-year-old know how to use a weapon like that and have access to it?
Yeah. And there is way more to it. I mean, the gun, you don't know it if you don't know anything about guns. It could be an automatic gun that has a safety on it. You don't know how to put the safety on it. If you just put the magazine in a lot of automatic guns without racking the slide, you're not going to be able to shoot it because there's no round in the chamber. You've got to know about these machines, these dangerous, powerful machines, but you've got a right to it.
It's a very complex, nuanced problem, and one of the terrible things about these really complex problems are people who have a simplistic solution.
Right.
Do nothing. We have a right to bear arms. Fine. Everybody has a right to have a gun. We want open carry. That moronic idea that you can walk into restaurants, everybody's got a gun strapped to their side. I mean, it's just
what
so...
about concealed carry? I mean,
they're problems.
They're nuanced. Or you can have it concealed, but the laws used to be, I guess this comes from the Wild West, if you were going to carry a gun, you had to carry it openly, and you couldn't conceal it. You could,
Everybody had to know you
Everybody had a gun, and everybody had to know you had the gun. You couldn't be sneaky about it.
That would empty out a restaurant pretty fast, don't you think?
I guess. There are pictures I've seen pictures from Arizona where people are showing up at political rallies with their Glock on their hip, not policemen. I know that's a little scary.
I read about a church where people came because you have one of these fundamentalist type churches, and they were having a gun appreciation Sunday or something.
Really?
Yeah.
Good
you could
idea.
come and you could give your personal testimony and you could show your gun. You could kind of do the whole thing in one demonstration, okay?
Well...
Do you think churches, by the way, do you think these preachers, anybody, ought to be able to have, in an organization, have tax exemption, forget what religion is, doesn't make any difference, ought to have tax exemption for the revenues they receive when they use the pulpit and the facilities of the church or sanctuary or cathedral or a mosque or whatever to make political statements and advance
they shouldn't.
Political
now
candidate.
they believe they should have it both ways. There was some kind of a protest, but as long as I remember, it's been our law that if you're a political organization, if you're proselytizing for political candidates, fine, do that, but you're not getting a tax exemption for it.
I'll tell you something.
And so churches are not, but they've been skirting the law for years. They have voting guides, and they're talking about, well, why don't you send a message to people who aren't godly, and because they they basically tell people who to vote for, and kind of skirt the law. And there was an effort by a bunch of religious leaders to say, we're just going to have a day where we tell people, and they're going to just kind of challenge the IRS. Well, You shouldn't have it both ways. You want the tax break, but you don't want any of the restrictions that come with it. Pick one. Fine. You want to be the church of proselytizing? You want to be the church of Mitt Romney? Go ahead. Yeah. You don't get a tax break.
One of the things that bothers me about these churches that do it, I'd be all-inclusive, synagogue, mosque, whatever, is they subscribe to a high standard of ethics based on their religious teachings, their sacred books or whatever, and yet they do something that's dishonest because it violates the Internal Revenue Service restrictions. So they are engaged in dishonest conduct, and they do it in a number of ways.
Render to Caesar what is Caesar's. Obey, I mean, most of the mainline churches teach you obey the civil laws, whether you like them or not. You're a citizen of the country.
But these active campaigns, they take a number of forms. One form is ridicule and sarcasm. That is about whoever the president, in this case might be Obama, could have been Bush, whatever. They have rallies where they bring in these very one-sided political figures to talk about their ideology that everybody knows identifies with one side or the other.
Right.
But what really is, to me, intellectually dishonest are people that are the ministers of these churches or priests or whoever they are that are violating our laws with impunity. What does that say about your standard of ethics and the subscribing that you do to whatever your ethical restrictions are? To me, it's...
Judge Roy Moore would say, you know, God's law is above man's law. He took an oath to support the Constitution, immediately went out and flaunted the Constitution. Now he's running for Chief Justice of Alabama. He's on TV because... Well, and if you understand anything, I mean, he was sanctioned, he was kicked out of office, he's back.
No, they always come back, and for those of you we have a lot of Alabama viewers, you could find a worse person to vote for. I just can't imagine who it would be, unless you elected maybe a convicted serial killer or something. I mean, you know, in terms of a person unfit for public office.
These are the people who don't want to be subject to Sharia law.
Right,
no?
Right.
And you say, well, the Ten Commandments are benign. I mean, it's just everybody ought to obey the Ten Commandments. Not so fast. Because one version of the Ten Commandments, I am the one God, you shall not have strange gods before me. Well, I mean, you have to be a monotheist? You can't be a pantheist in this country and be recognized in the court?
Well, one of the problems with the Ten Commandments, we've had this before, this was a great article, I think it was, I forgot where I read this, or many years ago. They had all different versions.
There are loads of versions.
Recognize the Ten Commandments.
The Jews have a different version.
And which one you pick is fine, but that doesn't mean it's the right one. And so
well, there are two versions of the Ten Commandments in the Bible, in the St. James or
King James.
King James version of the Bible.
We have
pick which one you like, but if you're a public official, you can't inflict it on people. Oh, we've been dying to talk about this. What we've got here is a nice trophy, and you can't read it. You want me to read it to the audience?
Oh, you can read it, of course.
Here's what it says on the
trophy.
Very
heavy. Watch it when you pick it up. It's very heavy. It's a beautiful trophy.
It's quite a heavy trophy. You think this is gold?
It could be gold. I didn't even know that you knew about it, and then here it is, and I'm kind of embarrassed about it, actually.
You're so humble.
You know.
2012 Mayor's Cup, Osceola Municipal Golf Course. And who won this trophy? It wasn't me. I don't play golf.
No.
Who?
Well, let me tell you the team that narrowly missed second place.
Were there more than 3 teams?
And we need a grand jury investigation for the goofballs that got the first place. Okay, I'll discuss that later because they had a handicap that was slightly higher than one could ever imagine. But in any event, on my team, I was privileged to play with the mayor and with his dad, Ashton Sr., who's a terrific golfer. Our mayor is a very fine golfer. And we had as our star player, the rock of the team, Wesley Pate, Jerry Pate's son, who in and of himself is a terrific golfer.
Well, why didn't you guys come in number 1?
Well, I'll discuss that. I'll
was it your fault?
I missed a few shots. I was kind of... You know, you're not heavy, you're my brother, but then they didn't want to claim me as their brother near the end. But I saw Wesley Pate hit a shot off the deck with a driver meaning the ball was on the ground. And normally you have to have the ball teed up with, to hit it with a driver. So he gets his driver. I said, I'm going to hit this ball right off the deck. And I looked at this, well, I mean, that's a hard shot anyway. He hit it 300 yards off the deck. He drove the ball 350 yards several times. Yeah. I mean, he is a great player and a wonderful young guy, too. It was just a great, he works for Howes McLeod, terrific young guy. So we just had a great time. The Mayor's Cup, all that money goes for First Tee. So we raised a lot of money for First Tee.
And what is First Tee?
First Tee is a wonderful program that teaches young people about golf. And the great thing, kids that wouldn't have a chance otherwise, the great thing about golf is, and this is a huge part of First Tee, is the ethics and the honor and the respect and the dignity that comes with the game. In the NFL, everybody's trying to cheat where the official can't find them. In golf, you make a mistake, you don't do right. You call it on yourself. You call the penalty on yourself, and it teaches young people integrity. It's just a great
after
thing.
These low-income kids play some golf, can they afford it anymore?
Yes, that's because we have a municipal golf course at Osceola that is a fabulous municipal facility, and Ashton, with his staff, Adrian, and everybody working out there, they have jacked up the support of Osceola Golf Course, and it is really good. We had a great time, and of course, I was very humbled to have your people bring this trophy here today. It was like,
very humble of you to have nothing to do with bringing the trophy in here.
Well, it was in my car, but
of course you had to.
Yeah, but I don't know who actually brought it in and put it up here, but let's move this, kind of keep it right in the middle if you don't mind. All right, we're going to take a short break. We're going to be right back with some other sterling observations here, some of them from Mad Magazine.
Yeah, we're going to find out how many teams were in this.
We'll be back here. We don't need a lot of detail. We'll be back in just a minute.
For over 30 years, we've had the privilege to live and work in this great community. Kerrigan, Estes, Rankin, McLeod, and Thompson, representing accident victims across Northwest Florida.
Okay, we're back. We're going to make a quick observation. Thank you. We've had a lot of responses to our discussion of the constitutional amendments. And if you, for those of you who get the Pensacola News Journal, they correctly said, in our opinion, vote no on all these amendments. They should not be on the ballot. This is inexcusable for the Florida legislature to do this, and I'm hoping the leadership of the Florida legislature will get the message. Stop screwing around with these ballots by putting things on there that you don't have the courage to vote on, and you're trying to dump it on the ballot, and then you tell the people advancing it how you can't do it. It has to be a constitutional amendment. It doesn't have to be a constitutional amendment.
The League, don't take our word for it, the League of Women Voters, which is a very worthwhile and respectable institution, came out the same way.
Same way.
Vote against them all. They are things that shouldn't be in the Constitution, ought to be done by legislation. Some of them are misleading. There's the Religious Freedom Amendment, which is not going to advance religious freedom. And
that's the single most misleading amendment, intentionally designed to mislead and deceive, and designed by the Florida legislature. You can ask your elected officials, what were you doing when you voted for it? That they'll probably deny they voted for it, but what are you doing trying to deceive people by telling them that they're voting for religious freedom? See, what's weaving in this amendment is this general prayer in school controversy. So people voting are thinking, boy, I'm going to vote for prayer in school, religious freedom. Has nothing to do with that. Has everything to do with changing the Constitution so the legislature can hand out money to any religious organization they want, including Islamic groups or any other groups. They can give them the money. There's not a thing you can do about it. Our Constitution now says No, you can't be handing out money to religious organizations. You can't do it. It's taxpayer money.
It's worked pretty well, hasn't it?
It works great. I mean, we have a really sensible educational system. One of the things I'm not really in favor of is the way that Jeb Bush designed this unaccountability for money to charter schools, where they don't have to meet any of the standards that the state education system schools do. I mean, I think it's awful that we have that. But if it goes a step further and they can start handing out your money, our taxpayer money to any religious group that happens to have enough juice in the legislature, I mean, it could be a lot of money, millions and millions of dollars. Not good. Not good.
Yeah. And so, some of them, first of all, they're just delivering a very bad deal to the local governments. I mean, it's feel good up in Tallahassee, and the really money comes out of the city of Pensacola and the county of Escambia. Some of these things sound well. We're going to give the widows of first responders or combat wounded veterans. It's a bad way to reward these people because it only rewards some of them. The whole thing is a mess and should not be in our Constitution.
Amen, brother. Now, you had, before we went on the air, were expressing some rather strong views about the State Department of Education just trying to help their fellow man. So,
and we ought to come back and do the merit retention thing as well.
Well, don't forget the constitutional amendments I have from Mad Magazine.
Oh, boy, we better get going.
Well,
okay.
You go ahead with what you got.
What Bob and I both read in the paper and had pretty much the same reaction. The Florida Department of Education came out with new goals for student achievement on standardized tests. And they were laid out by race. I think the Asians were the highest. I don't know the numbers. But the Asians had to meet a higher standard, and then whites, and then you had, I don't know how it all broke down. But because I found the whole thing offensive, it's really suggesting to black kids, well, we don't expect you to achieve as well as other kids. But you know where it comes from? It's not the Florida Department of Education's fault. The national government, under whatever they're calling it now, the race to the top, or steal your money and give it back to you only if you obey us, or whatever the proper name for this ripoff is, they decide that, first of all, they decide that you have to measure according to race. Well, why should you?
I agree.
I mean, there are other ways to measure. Why don't you measure according to the parent's income? That would be a good way to measure. And I want to suggest to you any way you measure. Let's say you measure tall people, then you find out, well, the tall people aren't doing as well, so we need to do something about that. And then I could be an advocate for tall people and say, you're getting ripped off. You're not getting your share of the money. And elect me, and I'll make sure that all the tall people get the money. So this really comes from the national government, and you have to comply, not by teaching everybody as well as you can, by making sure the gap closes. So everybody's the same. That's the idea, the national government.
You think Republican kids ought to be held to a lower standard?
I don't think that.
Oh, you don't?
I don't think we ought. Do you think we ought to report it?
Report what?
Well, we report race. They ask you on the census form, what race are you?
Right.
I think you get to deny that.
You can.
And more we have mixed race people.
Of course.
But still, the people who are making money off the race deal, they want that race stuff in.
So if a Hispanic youngster has a parent that is Caucasian and a father...
And one of his grandparents is Asian, what is he? I guess he gets to pick.
He gets to average everything. It's very easy. He just does some averaging.
Do they even have a box for mixed race?
No, they don't. They don't.
Here's the kind of nonsense that goes on. Elizabeth Warren, who looks about as white as anybody you can see, she is running for Senate up in Massachusetts, and she was passing enormous government regulations of the financial industry. Well, she scammed up some extra benefits for Harvard by being a Native American. She claimed to be a Native American. She was related to some tribe or other.
How did we...
Remotely, and Harvard got to count that and get some extra swag from the government because they were doing something for Native Americans. The whole thing's a scam.
How did we go from the Florida Department of Education to this gratuitous assault?
It's an illustration.
Well, Elizabeth Warren.
It's an illustration.
I had no warning that was coming. I'm caught dumbfounded. How am I supposed to respond to it? You told me we were going to stay in the Department of Education.
The way you can respond is a good point, and we'll move on. I mean, if you want me to tell you how to respond, what do you think?
Well, I need next week for Elizabeth Warren because she's a wonderful person.
There's no defense for Elizabeth
Warren. And she might have a little Indian. Okay, let's not go nuts.
Some faint ancestor was a member of some
But on the whole,
Indian tribe.
On the whole, I agree with you that these different standards for different kids. I don't know what motivated it. Maybe it's well motivated. Maybe you want kids to have goals they can meet or something. I don't know, but when you start meddling with something like, you start fiddling with something like that, you're not going to have a good outcome.
Can I ask you? I want to ask you the fundamental question.
Okay.
Should we track performance by race?
No.
I agree.
No. What's that got to do with
anything? If kids are doing bad, you give them help. If schools are doing bad, you give them help. Whatever the skin color is. And besides that, we're deciding things based on skin color. I mean, the whole concept of race is kind of fuzzy.
Well,
anyway.
what's going to be more fuzzier and fuzzier is we have Asians, Hispanics, Indonesians,
and they're all marrying each other. Now people are feel a lot more free to date and marry whoever they feel like. You don't have to have the same skin color, and we're all going to be mixed up. A Jesuit priest at Holy Cross told me this a long time ago, because back in the 60s there were racial problems and stuff. He said, this is all going to be okay when everybody's intermarried and everybody's kind of the same shade of beige or something, which is, maybe that's the way we're heading. I certainly don't see anything wrong with marrying whoever you want, whatever color they are, and, then your kids are a blend and they won't have a place to check on the form, but that's all right.
I think maybe the most beautiful people in the world are Hawaiians. There are mixes there that are in 5 or 6 races or whatever.
There are Eurasian children that are just exotic and beautiful. There are children from any
I agree.
Group
all God's creation is beautiful.
Yeah.
Now, are you interested in some other constitutional?
It's from Mad Magazine? Absolutely.
Yes. All right, here's one of them. This is from the Detroit Very-Picayune News, okay? Proposition 94, they recommend to vote no.
What is that? Was this a real proposition or are they making it up?
Well, you'll know when you hear it.
Okay.
Moves weekly meeting of City Council from room 17B, Town Hall, to lane 12, Midway Bowling Alley. Send Bob Forsberg a message, remind him that he knew when league night was when he ran for councilman last year. Vote no on Prop 94.
That's pretty good.
Okay, now.
That's pretty good.
How about this? The Phoenix Mud Flapper. Proposition 72, vote yes. Okay. Vote yes on Prop 22 allows 6-year-olds to drive themselves to school. Independent research proves immediate reduction in overcrowded buses. It's about time, yes, on Proposition 72. Okay, the Town Crier, all right, measures a panel of no less than 8 watchdog groups, each comprised of 12 to 14 independent consultants to oversee municipal government committees on overspending. Committees for smaller local government, subcommittees for even smaller local government, and committee against political cronyism and nepotism. Fiscal impact. It's probably negligible. Join Steve Wilson, Robbie Wilson, Elaine Wilson Bixley, and Jim Bixley of Wilson and Bixley Consultants in voting yes on Measure C, okay? Proposition 23, vote yes. This is from the Waynesville-Dorth Coupon Luck Penny Saver. Okay? Places strict 4-penny limit on penny dish grabs, preventing greedy shoppers from using the public sector to subsidize more than 4% of purchases per dollar spent. Our pennies are for everyone. All right, let me see what else I've got. 1, 2 more. All right.
Chuck Schumer wanted to pass federal legislation to lower the volume of commercials. Well, we're talking about silly stuff.
Well, I kind of agree with that. All right, now, proposition, they just push up the prices, right? Because you have fewer in number. Okay, this is the Seattle No One Reads Daily. Invalidates an 1867 law against rolling a cannonball down the middle of Main Street during a hailstorm on a Tuesday in May while eating a pickle and wearing a hoop skirt. Wacky laws on kids section of city website will have to be updated at enormous taxpayer costs, while annual events area of site is still saddled with embarrassing geranium festival typo. No on Proposition 18. Well, the point of these is that it's nutty stuff like this that's on the Florida ballot every election. Just goofy things like this. Now,
and it reminds you, there are some wacky laws that remain on the books forever.
Well, we have plenty of wacky laws. I think every once in a while they'll come up with even a wackier law. But the other papers that they observe are the Intercourse Observer, that's USA Yesterday. Anyway, this is all available in the current issue.
Quite a shill from Mad Magazine.
All available in Mad Magazine, which is refreshing reading compared to. Well, you can have this on your. Keep this on your coffee table so that when your spouse is trying to watch Fox News, you can get an equivalent amount of rational thinking just by reading this. Okay. So that's for Fox News. What else you got today?
Well, we touched on the amendments. We've probably got just a couple of minutes we can talk about
retention.
Merit retention.
Merit retention.
Now, the Florida Bar in its wisdom. Oh, this is another Florida Bar thing that I just love. The Florida Bar is all about diversity, which is kind of quotas. But the trouble they appointed somebody in charge of diversity. And this nice lady said, well, the problem we're having is the Florida Bar doesn't force you to report what race you are. So we can't figure out what problems we're going to solve. So if you would tell us what race you are, then we'll come up with some problems to solve, and then we'll regulate everybody more.
Perfectly rational to me.
Yeah.
How can you solve a problem if you don't know what the problem is?
Right.
You know, your thinking's a little bit fuzzy. You're thinking a little fuzzy. But let's see if we can reach a good suggestion for our viewers on these judges who are putting up with us in court all the time.
Well, let's talk about what merit retention is.
Merit retention,
The Florida Bar did a survey, and nobody knew what merit retention is. That's because what appears on the ballot is, shall this judge be retained in office? That's pretty simple. We don't have an A versus B election. Most elections are, Jones is running against Smith. Whoever gets the most votes wins. This isn't like that. The judges just stand for what's called merit retention, where the ballot just says, shall Judge or Justice so-and-so be retained in office. Now, they don't get put on the ballot because they've done anything wrong. Justices are the Supreme Court. That's true at the U.S. level and the Florida level. Everybody else is a judge, appellate courts and trial court judges. So, there is an effort this year. There are 3 judges who come around just because they've been on the court for a certain amount of time. They come around every 6 years. It's Judge Peggy Quince, Judge Barbara Pariente, and Judge Fred Lewis. So they come up for merit retention. They've been retained before, but they've done some stuff that some interest groups don't like. So here's the kind of misleading stuff they do. They voted to let a convicted killer go free. Just they picked some hot button issue. No, they didn't. They voted that the procedures weren't right. And what they don't put in there is this convicted killer got kind of a redo and wound up back on death row.
Right.
The judge's job is, no matter how heinous the crime, make sure the procedures are done properly, because everybody has a right to that, like it or not. Because we can't give terrorists a fair trial. You can't call them terrorists until they've been convicted, see? So they get a fair trial too, and they get a lawyer. And
they usually get convicted.
And they usually get convicted. Most people get convicted. But in this country, we don't judge in advance. We afford everybody fair procedures, procedural due process. It's the judge's job to enforce it. Everybody hates him. Well, we know he's a killer. He came out as a picture in the paper. He looks like a killer, and we hate him. And the judges make sure they get a fair shake. And it's important. And these judges should be retained.
Now,
every paper that's looked at it
says the same thing.
Same thing.
So
retain them enough.
Vote to retain all the judges, including the district court judges. Decent people, doing a good job. Tough jobs to do. I mean,
lots of reasons. And
now, we really shouldn't close the program until you say a little something about that. I never. You know what I didn't hear from you?
Yeah.
I never heard the word congratulations.
Oh, that's an oversight. Before we go off the air, I want to offer my sincere congratulations for Bob being the worst guy on the team that won 3rd place. How's that?
Well, I wasn't the... If I was the worst guy on the team, it wasn't necessary to add that, though, because I was on a team. We're all working together.
That's right. You're a team player.
They had to pull me up a little bit. I acknowledge that.
That's all right. You're not a professional.
But it doesn't lessen the...
And your presence on the team probably added something. We don't know why.
Is that a congratulations or not?
Congratulations to Mr. Kerrigan.
Well, thank you. And we're wrapping this up.
We got to go.
We have to go.
He has some stuff he should be congratulated for. Real stuff.
We'll be back next week. We'll see you next week. Good night.
Bye.
For over 30 years, we've had the privilege to live and work in this great community. Kerrigan, Estes, Rankin, McLeod, and Thompson, representing accident victims across Northwest Florida.